starting now.
Genau.
I always hate how long this is. I know it has to go to space and back, but I always hate how long the
lag
is.
Yeah.
So, but we're here now, so
we're on.
Take it away.
Are we live?
We are live.
I know you love this.
I love it. I'm just enjoying it so much.
The air is green. Tell me how to get Shakuhachi Street. That's what we're doing today. So, welcome to another episode of Shakuhachi Street. Today's episode was brought to you by the letters Su and U, and the number 432 is Sean's favorite. All right. As always, our host is Sean Big Bird Head. Say Ohio, Sean.
Ohio.
And I am your imaginary live stream helper, Linus Snuffleupagus Callahan. All right. Today,
there's a lot of inside baseball happening, and you're bringing out a side of LaRon that I've only seen like once or twice. And no, and LaRon, that's not how you said it. You said it like this. You said it like that. Okay?
Hell no.
Like that.
Hell no. So, today's episode, actually, the reason that I went this route is because we are going to talk about the Shakuhachi beginner. Not only the new player, but also the new Shakuhachi listener, i.e. the spouses and friends who are subjected to your playing when you're new. Mm-hmm. And, I always said to my wife, could be worse, I could be playing the oboe. I guess if I wanted to be Japanese guy, it could be worse. I could be playing the Hichariki.
Oh, man.
So, anyway.
Losing subscribers.
But people are dropping that fucking, I'm out. People are just quitting. All right. So, what I want to talk about for the beginner player is the beginner instrument, the best practices for a beginner, and what beginner expectations should be. Okay? What you should expect in what kind of time frame. And then for the listener, I want to talk about how to make the Shakuhachi more enjoyable for your listeners, or at least not grounds for divorce.
Oh, God.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So let's start, if you're amenable, Sensei.
Yes.
Let's start with some good reasons to play the Shakuhachi. I did a little research because that's what I do. It's my master's degree. I have no other skills. So I research stuff. So I did some research on that. Playing a musical instrument has been shown in studies to have numerous psychological benefits, including cognitive function, improved cognitive function, improved mental health, including confidence, and it can even treat depression. Playing an instrument well, I can tell you from personal experience, playing an instrument badly doesn't help at all. But playing an instrument well can help with your depression. And it actually, in children, is shown to enhance academic performance, which I think a lot of parents in Asia would be surprised to hear that, because they think that music, like those piano lessons, cello lessons, or whatever, they take away from math homework or whatever. But they actually have been shown to improve academic performance. And then there's physical benefits as well, including improved coordination, reduced stress, enhanced motor skills. And for those of us that are a little older or a little fatter, it's positively impact your heart rate. It can reduce your blood pressure and even potentially strengthen your immune system. And then, of course, with the Shakuhachi,
how do you measure that?
Strengthening the immune system?
Yeah.
Well, you can measure like the actual like white blood cells, or you can measure actual T cells or whatever in the body. It's a blood test, basically.
I'm calling pseudoscience in this one.
Well,
I want to read that.
Okay. And there's also, with the Shakuhachi, of course, we have this big breathing component, right? One would assume that a good Shakuhachi player would have like strong lungs and strong chest capacity and whatnot. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, your thoughts on this, Sensei? I didn't tell Sean about this at all. It's the first he's heard of any of this. So I get to show up with all the, research, and he's like off the top of his head.
All right, so let's go with the first question again.
Yeah, the first question. So, Let's talk about the beginner instrument.
Hmm.
What is the key thing that a beginner should be looking for?
Playability,
Ease of play.
ease of play. Something that's really easy to play and something that you like. You don't want to break the bank, right? You're not supposed to be buying something that's $5,000, $10,000 as a beginner. You want something to make sure that you can get into it and then feel like, yeah, this is something I want to do. That's why I'm not like completely against the U or any of those cheaper options, because it does give you like something to start with where you say, yeah, I'm really interested in this, and what you blow $175 on it. That's nothing compared to like what getting something that's more serious.
Right.
And then from there you can also say, oh, I really want to explore the Jinashi stuff, and I really want to focus on Honkyoku. Then maybe you do the Diet resin model, or you get yourself a you custom order something over a period of time.
Product placement. No, this is actually a really good idea for a beginner because of the durability and also just the ease of play. It is very easy to play. I would say that it's easier. It's hard to compare, obviously, because years have passed, but I feel like it's easier to get a note out of that than it was to get a note out of my beginner Yozon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
and it's easier to, like I say, it plays very similarly to my main flute, so
Yeah,
it's really easy.
but you want something that has like a decent tone with it, and that's not going to break the bank. Because as a beginner, guidance is probably the most important thing. Like even like last month, I was just tweaking around a little bit with a Ryuteki, and I bought myself two of them. I bought like a professional one, and then I also bought a beginner one, which my wife was using. But the beginner one is actually easier to play than the professional one.
Really?
Yeah, but the professional one has a better tone.
Oh, I see.
So there's some stuff with it. Oh no, we're
Sorry.
going back with Sesame Street again.
Sorry.
And then, but anyways, that professional Ryuteki is has a beautiful tone, but it's very difficult to play, right? And it's more expensive, and so then that takes away from like the finances of going to finance a lesson and do something one-on-one with somebody,
Right.
and that guidance is really important.
Okay, and I just threw up in the chat, just as a general reference, the quick start guide video that you made. So you've got a video out there that kind of explains how to get going on the shakuhachi, but I wanted to kind of delve into things a little more specifically today. So we're looking for an instrument that's playable, and then once we have the instrument in hand, what do you think are sort of what is a good beginner practice session look like?
One of the things that I encourage people to do when they first start studying with lessons with me is just learning how to make that first sound and then making it repeatable. So taking like the flute, for example, and to say, okay, well, I'm gonna work on generating the sound re, right? And then putting that away, bringing it back, and do the same thing, like doing like an exercise like that. And then maybe the same thing with roll, bring it back, bring it back, same thing. And again, something like that. It's a really great use of part of your practice. Now, another thing too to be aware of as a beginner is what it means to like practice and what it means to play.
Right.
So like that's part of the practice session, but you definitely want to have a part where it's just playing, where you just mess around, read tunes, play something by ear, kind of just like mess around and start playing a bunch of notes. Noodle around. Yeah, all that stuff is really important. You want to have balance of both of that in your practice and play, right?
I like the point that you started with re rather than jumping straight to row, because I think a lot of people naturally want to close all the holes and play row. And row is not the easiest note to get at the very beginning. It's easier to get. I like to start people on re or just everything open, and you're likely to get some kind of sound at that point, and you can move from there. But
Agreed.
And as far as the playing thing goes, I think a lot of like with guitar, it's fairly common to turn on music on the radio and mess around and try to play with it. And I don't think many shakuhachi players do that. I don't think many shakuhachi players turn on music and try to blend in with it, or go online and find yourself a chord pattern, like a blues chord pattern, and just try to match notes with it, because then you get a feeling for where your instrument sits with other instruments, like where that we know it on paper, you can see that it's a D, but what does that mean, and how does it sit with other things that you might hear?
Hmm.
So it's good
Hmm.
practice being able to hear your instrument in the mix of other instruments and understand when it matches and when it doesn't.
Sure.
Okay. And so what about the expectations of the beginner? Like, I
Hmm.
know that if you're playing, there's that tremendously irritating YouTube advertisement for, if you learn these 4 chords, you'll know 100 songs, right? And so there's this understanding with piano players that if you learn these 4 chords, you're going to be, playing
Everything. Yeah.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
going to be playing the
Okay.
Beatles, and
Um.
everything.
Yeah. So the expectation is that like you should just basically just find a way to enjoy your own sound first and foremost, and have understanding that um you can learn really basic folk songs and children's songs without having to learn all these extra notes on top of it.
Right.
But in order to learn the classical repertoire and like the original music that was written for the shakuhachi and designed for the shakuhachi requires a lot of knowledge of different tone colors and so on and so forth. And so the walking into the shakuhachi is basically demanding patience from yourself, which is probably the one of the virtues that is most uh, hard to find or very very seldom amongst people,
Yeah.
right? Because of our culture, right? It has
Sure.
nothing to do with you know us as individuals. It's more of a cultural influence because of how things have developed and everything is so immediate. Nothing on the shakuhachi is really immediate.
Yeah, that's true. And I think also that I think a lot of people come to the shakuhachi. If you come to the shakuhachi from a fipple flute, if you come from playing recorder or tin whistle or Native American flute or something like that, the initial learning curve of how to make a sound is really stiff. Like,
Mm.
I have a student right now who is a very successful Native American flute player, and the shakuhachi is, he's like, it's a totally different thing. Like, it's it's not you put in the right amount of breath and move your fingers appropriately, and
Hmm.
the sounds come out. There's a
Hmm.
lot more going on than that. So the expectations should be like to enjoy what the sound that you're making, but also to learn to be patient with
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good way to just kind of truncate it into like a simple sentence because like for example, like, when we learn our first tune, Hinomaru, you
Mm,
already have a challenge that's ahead of you that's not just, moving the fingers over the holes. You have to have one note that goes into the second octave.
right.
And so then the focal point of that is how do I get that rokan? But if you're trying to learn, let's say you've only played Hinomaru, you played Hinomaru successfully, and then you want to play an OST, like on a video game that requires a bunch of half holdings and head movements and all this sort of stuff, or even in some cases extended techniques,
Right.
you're really going to be stressed out and frustrated because nothing's going to be in tune. You're not going to get a really good sound, and it's going to take you so much time just to get this really simple melody. Because though it might be really simple on an instrument like piano or guitar,
Sure.
it can be really difficult on shakuhachi. In vice versa, something that's really simple on shakuhachi can be damn near impossible on the piano or guitar.
Right. Well, and it's the difference between a diatonic and a chromatic instrument. Whereas the shakuhachi is chromatic in the right hands. But
Yeah.
initially, the shakuhachi is a diatonic instrument when you first start playing it. And if you're
Hmm.
not familiar, like, it doesn't have all the black and white keys immediately
Hmm.
available to you, is what that means. And so it's similar to, picking up the harmonica or something like that, where you realize all of a sudden that the notes you're looking for aren't there.
I
They are
did.
there, but you have to learn how to bend to get them.
I did play a 9-hole flute once, a 9-hole shakuhachi.
Really?
Yeah,
9 hole?
yeah, it was very uncomfortable.
I bet.
Yeah,
That sounds wait. So
four on
just
each
so
fingers.
just this thumb for support and everything else was a hole?
No, the back hole also was there. So
Yeah.
so four, four, and then back hole 9.
That's almost, well, I mean, that's like, at that point, might as well just play recorder or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like recorder because they even have like the recorder has the pinky
Half
with
holes.
half. Yeah, well they have 2 holes in the bottom of the recorder, and at least for the kids
Mm,
versions, and so you can do multiple half holes there and whatever. like the alternate fingering options for the 9-hole flute are kind of insane, but it's like really frustrating.
I
Like,
bet.
and then the biggest issue is always making sure the pinkies are covering the holes
Right.
properly. But
Right. Is it
that's
linear tuning, like from the bottom up?
yep.
That helps. It's not, that's always the challenge for students once they get into play. They can play in con, and then you realize that the con of ooh is not an octave.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, so there's some things like that are a little difficult. And again, back to that idea of like being patient with yourself and being patient with the instrument. There's all the good stuff is in there. You just have to be patient to get there. um, the other thing that we wanted to talk a little bit about was how to make the shakuhachi enjoyable for those people around you.
Mm, that's extremely difficult.
It's tough
Bec-
because if your
yeah.
family or your spouse or whatever are not into it, they're not into
Yeah,
it.
and honestly, we never sound good in the beginning. Right? It's like the shakuhachi is not an instrument where like you pick it up and you're just fall in love with it because your sound is so deep and resonant. It's
Mm,
usually airy and tinny
yeah.
for a quiet time.
I mean, to be fair, whenever you listen to like, I think the big difference is that like children, when they start playing instruments, tend to be just really bad, right? And anyone who's ever listened to like a 6-year-old playing a violin, right? And they're murdering hot cross buns on a violin, right?
Oh, it's the worst.
It's
Yeah.
terrible. And as parents, you're just sort of like, all right, whatever, I'll put up with this because they're little and they're getting through it. But of course, when we start playing shakuhachi, most of us are adults. And so it feels a little funny to not be playing well right off the bat. My suggestion for making it enjoyable for those around you is one, talk to the people that have to listen to it
Mm.
and schedule.
Yeah, scheduling good times.
And scheduling is really important for good practice habits anyway.
Yes, indeed.
You need to practice at roughly the same time or same circumstantial time. Like if your circumstantial time is whenever I'm done with lunch or whatever, you need to have something that tells you, okay, it's shakuhachi time, right? It's time to
Hmm.
practice. And also, and I'm guilty of this, I'm sure you are too.
Hmm.
When you're struggling with a lick and you're like trying to do it and trying to do it and trying to do it, and you're repeating the same 2 or 3 notes
Oh, yeah.
25 times.
Yeah, you're not helping yourself.
No, that's like nails on a chalkboard. And so break those up.
Yeah.
I mean, we all woodshed difficult passages, but break those up so your spouse doesn't eventually come in and go, enough,
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because the other thing too is that you can only get so much work done on an instrument or like even on a passage in a day. Like you can't like if it's something that's really difficult, you can't expect to master it. You can only improve it marginally, and then you marginally improve on it every single day, and until it finally reaches a point of proficiency.
well, and when you've really put the time in and then you put the instrument down and go away, I mean, the way our brain works and the way our nervous system works is that time that you put in is still being processed.
Mm.
And
Oh yeah.
oftentimes, and I'm sure you've had this experience, oftentimes I've worked on a lick until I just like, wow, this is terrible, and put
Oh
it
yeah.
down.
It actually becomes worse.
Yeah, and then the next day you pick up the flute and all of a sudden it's better. You're like,
Yeah.
what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really weird thing, like the subconscious kind of like working out all the details. And
Yeah,
that's why some people would say that one of the best times to practice is right before you go to sleep because your brain works out all the issues at nighttime.
yeah.
But I've always found the morning time to be better, like around the 10 a.m., 11 a.m.
But
portion.
you're a morning guy. Like you
Am I
get
really though?
how early do you get up, dude?
5 a.m.
That's madness. When I was a police officer, I was stunned to find out that there are actually 2 6s in a day. I was not aware that there was a 6 in the morning also, and I just this is horrible. And I am not a morning person. I would love to practice at night, but I don't because of my neighbors. Because I live in a Japanese house,
Yeah.
very thin walls.
Mhm.
Luckily, my neighbors on one side is hardly ever home, and the neighbor on the other side is like across the street, so I
Yeah.
don't have much of a problem. But it is especially higher notes can be quite piercing. So I
Mhm.
usually don't practice after 9, but if I could, I would. I
Oh
would
yeah. Like
definitely play right before bed.
oh, sorry about that. What did you want to know? Oh, about so Laurent's back. About Laron's like, no, you talk shit about the history, I'm gone. uh, about practice habits, you know. It's like,
No,
no, but
I think the
Laron's
hichiriki, just like the oboe, it is amazing in the right hands.
but Ron's been doing a lot of Ryu Teki recently. That's why I even picked up one too.
Ah.
I was kind of getting a little jealous that he was playing that, so I wanted to do it too. And then I realized I don't have any time. So and then
When I was a kid, I lived in Michigan for 1 year, and the local area there had fife and drum corps.
Mhm.
And I always wanted to play. I wanted to play drums. I wanted to learn
Mm.
snare, but they knew that I was a flute player, and they're like,
Oh,
"Nope,
yeah,
we
you're
need more
done.
fife players."
Yeah. You
The
know, this is actually an interesting point I thought about because it's the thing that I find, especially a lot of my younger students, is that they get interested in too many things at once.
Yeah.
So you know, like I don't want to call him out, so I won't say his name, but he knows who he is, and I already told him anyway, so I guess it's
Plays
fine.
too many instruments.
It's not that it's too many hobbies.
Ah,
So like he's been doing Shakuhachi with me for about 4 years now, very serious and doing very well. He does IT programming and stuff like that, and then but he's also starting piano. And then he
mm,
was messaging me about doing some calligraphy stuff, and I'm like, okay, slow your roll, bro. You only have so many hours in the day, right? And just adding new hobbies isn't going to give you more time.
that's right.
So, I my advice to him was like, I think that because you're advancing in Shakuhachi at a very high level, you know that the sort of fundamental practices don't have to happen as often.
Right.
So it's not a bad idea to pick up an instrument like piano, especially if you enjoy it, right?
Learn a lot of theory and
Yeah,
whatnot that way.
and that's what he was saying. He's like, I really want to learn it for theory, understanding harmony and stuff like that. I'm like, that's great. But then, like, if you're gonna add calligraphy on top of that, it's like, oh, you know, that requires a lot of time as well, and you're gonna be spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah.
So, like, when I did my studies for calligraphy, I did just that as my bonus thing. Then, when I had gotten to a point where I was happy and I could do it on my own, then I added shomyo, and then I went back and did more calligraphy. So there's you have to really balance out your time, especially like in our cases of having kids and a
Right.
wife and family and responsibilities and you know balancing your checkbook and all that kind of stuff. And the checkbook for those who are younger, it's a book that where you have there and you have to write out money to people
Yes.
and yeah,
Yeah. Okay, Grandpa.
yeah. They don't do that anymore. It's okay, Boomer, by the way.
Right.
But you wouldn't know that, Boomer. So
When I was a child, I was on my way to Shelbyville and I had an onion tied to my belt because that was the fashion at the time. No, I think that whole idea of like spreading yourself too thin is worse today than it was when I was a kid because we didn't have you couldn't go to the internet and stumble into a rabbit hole and go, "Whoa, where's
Yeah.
my credit card?" Now I'm totally into Warhammer now. You know,
Yeah.
that didn't happen to you as often.
Yeah, I mean the worst you got would be like D&D.
By the way, what are you trying to say?
I'm saying you might have a problem.
Dungeons and Dragons made me the man I am today. Okay, it's all that reading. Dungeons and Dragons. If your kid doesn't read, get them playing Dungeons and Dragons. They'll read because they have to. It's kind of like homework, the game, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and if your kid doesn't like math, get them playing Dungeons and Dragons. At the very least, they'll understand statistics, right?
Oh, yeah.
They'll understand chance,
Mm.
you know. And I found that. Well, I put it this way: I don't know anyone who plays Dungeons and Dragons who isn't also an avid reader.
Mm.
Like, just you either when you want to play D&D, you learn to read, or you were already a reader. And
Yeah, and you have to
found your
learn like the
nerds.
backstory of the worlds of the characters and what
Yes.
gives their strengths, like all of their strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that.
And
why
also,
it's the
there's
case.
just fantastic. I mean, the books that inspired Dungeons and Dragons, not only the Lord of the Rings, but also like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. I think those are like required reading for any little boy that's running around in the backyard with a stick and a trash can lid, you know, pretending to be
Yeah.
a warrior. You go, wait, stop, you hear, and you hand them Swords Against Death Magic, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. It's the best. It's the best. It's even got. It's perfect for like 12, 13-year-olds because it's even got. There's a little bit of sex. It's a little.
Yeah, a little bit. It makes them like, what's that?
There's a little bit of fantasy sex just so that you care about the girlfriend who's gonna die later.
Mm.
So-
Mm.
But
And that brings a good point up for as well as in the sort of the beginner's mind of shakuhachi is that like reading into a lot of the fantastical stories of komuso and all that kind of stuff is also fun,
mm,
but you got to be careful to not get sucked into it and whatever. Like to say that like so one of my well, the friend of the studio Nick Belando, his teacher would tell him that in order to be like a komuso, you would have to be playing for a minimum of 20 years. Like that's the first part of being a komuso is that there's actually a time element into it. It's not just you get it you wear a case and there you're a komuso.
citation needed.
Citation. Oh, it's a kid from his teacher.
Okay.
So you can call it hearsay or whatever. What you want to be a komuso now?
No, I'm calling it hearsay, but okay.
It is hearsay, but
I okay.
actually I think you would actually call that more of like an argument from authority.
Okay.
But yeah, so technically, like the actual komuso status would be after 20 years of playing. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing. Like you can become an obosan, you can be a monk at the age of 14,
Right.
right? But that doesn't mean you're actually doing all the duties of the things and functioning as an abbot at a location, right? There's
Sure.
time that comes afterwards.
Sure. I just I've heard a lot of exaggerated things like, oh, the shakuhachi, what is the saying, like, oh, it takes a year to make to make a sound, stuff
Uh,
like that. That's just not true.
yeah,
Like, it doesn't take a year. I mean, it takes
yeah,
a while, but it doesn't take a year.
that's true, and that's more of like a Japanese sort of like
It's like hyperbole.
yeah, it's a hyperbole, but it's also sort of like an aesthetic thing too, because in Japan, it's more about the time put in than
Mm,
rather the output that's actually come of it. So, for example, like in tea, it doesn't matter how good of tea you make. It's
mm,
about being there with the teacher and in the group for 10 years.
yeah.
So everybody becomes a shihan at 10 years.
So you got to level up, is what he's saying. You got to get your experience points. Get out
Yeah.
there, grind, kill orcs. Make sure you search the bodies.
Yeah, get all the rupees.
Sometimes they have gold. You never know, and you gotta grind. Got to make sure you do your necessary tithing and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. I only play clerics, in case you were wondering. What about the tithing? That's
Mm.
I only play priests. So, but it's really fun in D&D. You can play a Komaso.
Yeah. So here's LeBron like LeBron says this. So yeah, I got that when I learned it for a music of Japan course, and he said I made too much sound too quickly, and that's sort of the thing. Like there's some in the old school way of teaching shakuhachi, you would do one lesson, one note.
Mhm.
So you start with the note E, and that's the lesson that you do for a half an hour with your teacher playing E. And the next week is Re, and then Chi, and then Re, and then Su, and then Ro. And then you would start to do other things with it and whatever. But it's extraordinarily slow because it's all about building patience and because in this sort of environment, they're looking at it as ethical discipline and
Mm.
moral training. So it's a little bit more than just learning, how to play the notes on the page. It's not about necessarily what you're doing, but how you are doing it.
Well, it's very similar to the martial arts too. Like in
Yes.
judo, the old days in judo, you would spend the first couple of months just falling down,
Yeah.
just learning how to fall or being thrown, being ukimi waza,
Yeah.
getting thrown. And if you really wanted to do judo, you would put up with that 3 months of just falling down.
Yeah, I think like the most like actual Japanese thing that was in the Karate Kid was like the washing the car stuff. Like that, like if for those who have lived here, like actually yes, that's like straight up like that's probably legit.
Yeah.
Because it's discipline more than anything else.
And you pay your teacher in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So, but I think that I guess the point that we're trying to get to is that it's, it's
It's
not
okay to move slow on
right.
shakuhachi, and it's more fun to enjoy the practice and the journey of it than trying to just complete a piece. Which completing a piece is fun, right? And I
Yeah.
do that a lot with my students because we learn our technique and all of our stuff through the pieces. We don't assign etudes. We don't assign anything like that. We use the pieces as etudes. So you're learning musicality, you're learning the notes and all that kind of stuff. I do a sort of a different approach. That it's a kind of a modern pedagogy of the West and how I approach that. But as far as everything else goes, like with developing your sound, that's just something that you just have to sit with and enjoy. So I have a lot of students who always want like the one quick answer of this is how do I just get a better, deeper, and warmer sound? Do I need to buy a new flute? It's
How
like
do I
no,
fix this?
like no, you're not. You can't buy your way into just immediacy and have something better. You have to, do all of these exercises and play these pieces and enjoy the time with you have with the flute. Like, and I mean, if you think of it this way, it's kind of like a very serious relationship, right? You can't just expect to have the same level of love that would take 20 years and just say, well, can I just buy a new wife to make that happen?
How how rich are you?
Yeah, yeah. It's just, how much money do you have? Yeah, and so I mean, like, yeah, I'm sure there's parts where the analogy falls short, and of course we can always buy a better instrument, but it's not going to make you better.
The worst thing is buying a better instrument and still sounding like crap.
Yeah,
And I've been there, and with guitars and ukes and flutes, I've
yeah.
been there.
I think if money is not an issue and you want to have a really nice instrument, fine. But for
Call
most
us.
people, yeah,
We'll hook you up.
I'll hook you up, no problem. I got you. But the thing is that that's not the end all be all. The actual point of it is that you have to spend time with the instrument and develop a relationship with it, learn how to play it. Now, like in the modern Giardi cases, the Giardis are designed to be pretty standardized and played. Most of them can be played very similarly. Back in the day, you would either had major on flute, or your teacher would have given you a flute, and it probably would have been really difficult to play, and you learned to play that flute. And so people will say about like Yamaguchi Shido or Yamaguchi Goro's main flute, they'll say, "Wow, it's really difficult to play." Because Yamaguchi Shido Goro learned how to play that flute. Or if like the same thing with Yamamoto Hozan's what is that maker's? So not Noosui. I can't remember his name. But anyways, his flute as well. A lot of people have wanted to play it, so it's in a museum somewhere, and when people try to play it, they go, "I can't even get a sound out of it." So there is part of that, even with the greats, that they learned how to play their flute and they got the most out of it.
Yeah.
And that's part of it too.
Well, and that's very counter to especially the Western mindset right now. We want everything faster, faster.
I mean,
Like,
like if
how
Google,
can I
yeah.
how can I use AI to make the Shakuhachi thing go faster, Sean?
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh. It's unfortunate that I get people that I get people that send me papers and like stuff and like things whatever, and it's so clearly written by
Chat GPT.
ChatGPT and I get it. Like, man, for writing emails, awesome, love it. I can say, here's what I want to say to this person, and here's the 3 points, and I say, okay, that sounds really robotic. I'm gonna go back through and fix it to make it sound more like me. But yeah, great tool,
Sure.
but it is really destroying a lot.
Yeah.
But you can use ChatGPT to help you. And so you can do something like this. Say, here are the 5 things that I really want to work on, and here are the 5 things that I'm really good at, and here are the 2 pieces that I'm whatever, and here's what I'm struggling with. Write out a 1 week practice
Curriculum.
curriculum for me
Yep.
to do that, and it's brilliant at that. It's really great, but you can't ask it how can I become better, right? It's not gonna answer any of those questions for you, but it can help organize things out because that's what it does best. So, like, for example, when I write my emails, I say, here are the things that I want to say, organize this out so it flows the best. Then you go out and fix it, because the hardest part for us as people is to organize ideas in a coherent, because we don't think necessarily in this sort of way. We think in a linear sort of way.
Especially with the the rising rates of ADD and ADHD and whatnot. I don't think that the internet is helping us.
No,
on
it's
that.
making it way worse.
It's making it worse, and so you do need sometimes something to like funnel you down and help you focus on what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think in that case that ChatGPT can be a great resource to help do that.
And I, for one, welcome our AI overlords.
I mean, yeah, if it's gonna be like iRobot, then maybe not.
Well,
but if it's gonna be more like that dream I had about having an AI assistant, then yes, I would definitely like that.
If it's gonna be like Star Wars, and I get like an astromech droid that just walks around behind me, booping and beeping, I'm out.
I definitely don't want an R2D2.
I don't want to learn another language. Like, Jesus,
So, what was the theory around why everybody spoke English? It was
Star Wars has no
Not Star
theory.
Wars, the Star Trek
Oh,
one.
Star Trek. Well, okay. So in Star Trek, there is an unspoken suggestion of the idea of panspermia,
Yeah,
that
that's what it
that
was.
humans were scattered everywhere. But also, they have the universal translator, which is this device that picks up the brainwaves of the person talking and turns them into
Hmm.
language and spits it out so you can hear it. And they don't often reference it, but in the new show in Pike, they've actually had some moments where the universal translator went to crap and everybody was speaking different languages. Like one guy was speaking French and Pike was speaking English and somebody else was speaking like an African language. And
Mm.
they got the universal translator back online and the whole crew was like, oh, thank God, 'cause they're not speaking Federation standard. But I think that for for having like focus and helping you like organize things, yeah, chat gpt is great. But one of my day jobs is I edit stuff that was generated by chat gpt, and I'm gonna tell you, it's tripe.
Mm,
Like it's so bad. And
mm,
anyone who actually spends time working in English, I can read a sentence or two and know that it wasn't written by a human.
mhm.
There's just turns of phrase and the stiffness of it that makes it really
You know,
obvious.
one of the things it does that I find really interesting is that it always does like a positive negative example sort of
Yes.
thing. Like
Yes.
it has some of those just kind of turns of phrases that are repeated again and again because it thinks it's good writing. There's nothing worse than poetry generated from ChatGPT. It's the
I was gonna
absolute
say
worst.
comedy. Ask Chat GPT to write jokes for you.
Oh no,
And
that's what
they're
Grok is for.
yeah.
Yeah, Grok is better for
They're
that.
pretty awful. Or like I like to ask Chat GPT things that are obviously jokes, and then Chat GPT doesn't get that it's a joke, right? Why do I sweat when I eat?
And it's like
Chat GPT is like, well,
you
the
might have a
causes
heart
of that could
contention.
be
You might have cancer or a heart
right.
condition.
Right. Why do I cry when I poop? Well,
And just
stuff like that. And Chat GPT is like, what is okay?
yeah, I one of my favorite things to ask it is how many R's are in strawberry.
Oh, I know. I've seen that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is that chat anything you generate from Chat GPT, if you're gonna then put your name on it, man, you better go over it with a fine tooth comb.
Yeah,
I
and
don't.
again, I think it's a great place for like I mean, I use it because it helps me organize my ideas. But you have to go through it so many times. Like there are so many things where I go, yeah, I did not say that you could write this. Delete all that and rewrite it. It's a thing and whatever. But this sort of idea with this Chat GPT taking information and sort of to organize it for us in the Shakuhachi world can really help. Going back to the universal translator, we have another issue too, which is translating the information that comes from the score and making it to something that's understandable for us as we want to play these pieces.
Right.
And what can be really frustrating is one terminology from one school doesn't mean something in another school.
Right.
So if you study in a school like mine where we grab from a multitude of different regional areas to play pieces, that can be really frustrating. So, another good practice is to actually make flashcards for yourself and or make a like a kind of vocabulary database.
I made flashcards in
Yeah.
the early days when I was the
It's
show done
it
book.
absolutely is necessary because
So, well, that brings us to another question. Like, how do you feel about the necessity of speaking Japanese?
I don't think that there's a necessity to learn how to speak Japanese to like play shakuhachi because that would be saying like, oh, you're gonna play chanson, so now you have to learn how to speak French, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, you want to learn Mozart? Okay, now you have to learn Austrian and German,
Right.
right? So good luck, right? And but that's not like what or whatever. It's not necessary because even opera singers who sing operas in Italian don't necessarily speak
They
Italian.
know how to pronounce
Yes,
Italian.
they know how to pronounce it and they can make it sound like they are. Now, most of them are required to take Italian, French, and German language courses at the university level, but they're only the introduction
And they're
courses.
just looking for accent. They're
Yes,
looking for
accent
the
and sound and being able to read the characters and how they pronounce it,
right.
like the schwa.
Yeah. Well, and I think that for Japanese scores, it can be very frustrating, especially since it tends to be quite small,
Or like illegible.
illegible
Hmm.
kanji, and you're just
Yeah.
kind of like, what? And I
Well, yeah.
study Japanese, and it's very difficult.
And like I mean, we have a Japanese language scholar in the chat. Like Laurent knows all about this sort of annoyance of Japanese language, and we don't necessarily always deal with modern Japanese. There are sometimes we deal with classical Japanese in our text. And the problem with classical Japanese is it depends on location and time.
Yeah.
And sometimes when things are written out, it could be classical Japanese, but it could also be classical Chinese.
Mm,
And then the grammar rules change.
right.
And so then the meaning can change. For example, like we have the piece Daiwa Gaku.
Hmm.
Okay, so that is the music of heavenly peace or whatever. But those first characters, Daiwa, is actually Yamato, which is Nara, where we live.
Right.
So it could have multiple meanings. It could be the nation of Japan, Yamato. It could also be the old province of Nara, Yamato, or it could be Great Peace, Daiwa. And so it depends on the context of it, what the composer means, and all these sort of things. But that's just one simple and probably, frankly, a little bit of a crude example of what I'm talking about. But in another example would be, what's the difference between a Nayashi and a Kanmuri? And
Mm.
what's the difference between a In Kanmuri and a Yo Kanmuri?
Right.
And what's the difference between a Nayashi and an Otoshi and a Chigiri? And you go, oh, well, dude, you're already in like so many characters here. I don't know where we're at. What are we playing again?
Right.
And that's why, like, when I teach, at least, we go by, piece by piece, and inside there's going to be focused techniques. And that's where you need to write them down. Say, this is what a Nayashi is. This is what an Otoshi is.
Right.
This is what these things are. And then start to practice those separate from outside those pieces. So that way, when they do occur in the same regional pieces or in another piece that has the same technique, we're not shocked by it.
Right. And coming across things like, like the first time you're reading and you kind of begin to understand how shakuhachi scores are written. And then you come across, what is that? That's a hiku. What?
Yeah. It means the same thing as the other thing that we did. It's just written differently.
Right.
Yeah.
What?
And here's another thing too. A lot of the shakuhachi scores, for the most part, and the ones that we use in ours are all handwritten.
Yes.
And a lot of times they're written by different hands. So I have students who will see a note like tsu, and then they'll see in the next line over tsu, but it's written slightly different. Because our eyes are so used to seeing computer stuff and everything is the same.
Fonts.
We see a slightly different tsu, and the student goes, wait, is that one different?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that one's the same. It just looks different because everything's written by hand.
It's further across the page, and his hand was getting tired.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, so I think that we've wandered all over the place and started talking about, Chat GPT and Dungeons and Dragons,
But it's all related to the beginner mind of Shakuhachi.
It is.
Because all these things we're using to get ourselves started.
And it is important as a beginner to just, like Laurent was talking, or Svenja was talking about, the journey is the destination. I've always hated those kind of aphorisms because they feel sort of cut and dry. They feel very pat.
Well, it also, for me, it feels like an excuse to not be good. Okay, that if I'm just to be honest and straightforward.
Right. But if you don't enjoy the process, it can be absolutely miserable. Right? I've played, when I was a kid, I played percussion after playing the flute, and so my band director in high school was like, "Hey, you can read treble clef, and you're a percussionist. So now you're a xylophone player. You play the xylophone, marimba, vibes, all that, right?" And it was cool. I enjoyed it for a while, but I really wanted to play drums. I wanted to play snare. I wanted to play toms. It was marching band, and I got stuck playing for 3 years of high school. Do you know how heavy a marching marimba is?
Very heavy.
I'm a big guy, so that was part of it too. But like, I marched a marimba in the summertime in California, right? And when you're playing an instrument that you don't love, and you're just making yourself do it because it's credits on your GPA or whatever, it's miserable. It's horrible.
It is miserable.
So if you don't find a way to, like, if you reach a point, I never thought I'd say this on a live, but if you reach a point where you're not enjoying the process of playing the shakuhachi, talk to your teacher. Time to take a break.
Yeah.
Time to do something different. Like if you're not enjoying Hankyoku, then learn some Minyo or vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with that either. It's not like, oh, if I'm not enjoying it, then I guess that this part of my life is over. I'm never playing Honkyoku again. Actually, no. That space from it actually could be the thing that inspires you to get even more into it.
Take 2 Mino and call me in the morning.
Yeah, that's right. Mino a day keeps the doctor away.
That's
So I'm
right.
telling you,
And I mean, Mino comes with sake.
as it does.
So
Yeah.
that makes it a lot better. All right, so the last little bit that I wanted to touch on was physical fitness and the shakuhachi.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so another famous shakuhachi player posted on his website about how shakuhachi players turn over the oxygen in their bodies more often because we breathe deeply and expel fully. I'm not really sure
Mhm.
about the science behind that, but the idea that we don't leave that last quarter of air at the bottom of the lungs just kind of hanging out. We
Mhm.
breathe everything out
Yeah, it's
periodically.
like still water has become still air in the lungs.
Yeah. So I know we talk a lot about hiking and about
Mhm.
getting outdoors with your instrument,
Mhm.
which is definitely I'd recommend wholeheartedly. I mean, you do it this time of year in Japan, you're going to need a raincoat and a lot of mosquito repellent. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's pretty gnarly here today. It's only in the or like 90 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's was like when I came over here this morning, it was uh
Yeah.
85% humidity.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's raining right
And now
now,
it's raining, so yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be hot.
Yeah,
Hot, hot. It's like unusually hot.
no, it's like it's like walking across the bottom rack of the dishwasher while it's running.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not good.
Yeah,
But it is good to get outside and play your instrument outside.
Mhm.
And so what about other things like stretching,
So
breathing
I
exercises?
do I do lots of stretching, and I do lots of things with the bow staff.
Very
And so
Watazumi of you.
well, I really like it. I really like the like muscle stretches. Like
Wasn't he a Joe guy though?
Yeah.
Shorter? Yeah.
yeah. Oh no, his is longer.
Oh,
It's
really?
longer.
More than
Yeah.
6 feet?
Yeah, his is definitely taller than him. But I use mine for like muscle rolls and stuff like that, and also like a variety of stretches. And I really like that. So I feel a lot better after I do it. Um, and I didn't even really think about, because like Watazumi did it, I was doing it. I actually was recommended to me by one of the karatekas that I should do that. And because there's like kata that you can do with
Sure.
bows and stuff like that, and I really liked it. And plus they're really cheap as well, so it's a really nice thing to work with, and I really enjoy it. Then of course, like well, I don't do it now, but like I used to do a lot of running. That's one of the things I'll probably continue in the future. But
Sorry, I had to fight back my gut reaction.
yeah, but running in Japan
Why?
is awful. Why running in Japan is awful?
I studied martial arts and I trained with guns,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't do all that to run from stuff.
Yes.
That's not how that works.
Well, it's just there is this thing called heart health.
Yeah, no, but if I'm running, you better run because something bad is coming.
Yeah,
No, I hate running. I played sports as a kid, and I just hate if there's a ball involved. I will run myself into the ground. I will run until I'm like this close to a heart attack because I'm competitive. But just running for the sake of running, what is wrong with those people?
Well, there actually is endorphin releases, right?
So I've heard.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen for like a long time. Like a runner's high. Runner's high takes a long time to get, actually.
I ran. I think the longest I've ever run in one thing was 10K, and
that's brutal. I never did that.
That was in the academy for the state police, and we did it, and there was a release of my breakfast all over the parking lot we ended in.
Yeah, the most I ever really did was 5Ks. Like when I was training for rugby, I did 5Ks.
I did a 5K as recently as like 2010, but yeah, no, I don't run. My children are like, "Dad, come on!" I'm like, "You go ahead. I'll get there in a minute." I'm watching from here. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So
well, biking is a really good
and
option.
I love to ride a bike. I love bicycling, and
it's better for the knees.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's actually that's a holdover from my childhood. That's the first like little taste. Well.
Taste of freedom.
When I was a child, in the 1970s, your first taste of freedom was getting your bike and your parents saying, all right, you can go to this street and that street and that street, and you can't go beyond that boundary. And as a kid, of course, I right to the edge. right to the boundary and is around my territory.
Hmm.
I am the master of all I survey.
I remember when I got my first bike, my mom said you can't cross the busy street, so I went right to the busy street and like, she ain't gonna see me.
She's not
Cross over,
looking.
and be like,
Yeah, we used to go to
the Schwinn Stingray. Did you have a Stingray?
Oh my God, yes! I had a Schwinn Stingray. I didn't have the cool 5-speed though. I had the single speed, but it was red with a banana seat,
Mm-hmm.
sissy bar. Hell yeah!
Yeah.
I had that bike when I think I was in first grade, so
I bet
6.
I bet those are so expensive now.
You'll see them occasionally out there, and people want a lot of money for them. They are a classic. They are a classic bicycle.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that, see how much they cost now.
And I used to ride wheelies on mine all the time, and I'm not sure what happened because I wasn't really much on maintenance. Oh my goodness! Yep, that's it right there.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one. 1969. That's just about right.
Yeah, they're asking about about $1,300, $1,200 for it.
Yeah.
Man, that's the one. And those were really easy to do the wheelies on,
Yeah.
and you could ride around on them.
So I used to ride
The
wheelies
wheelies.
on mine all the time, and then one day I pulled a wheelie and I was riding down the sidewalk, kind of showing the kids next door, and my front wheel fell out of the forks. And then you're like, well, I guess I'm riding a wheelie forever,
Well, look at this one. This was 1967. It's only 500.
Okay, and that's the one with the handbrakes.
Yeah.
That's got I think, well, maybe that's got an internal hub. Is that a 3-speed?
Yeah,
it's 3-speed.
But that's not the one that you do the wheelies on. This was the one that you do it on.
Yeah, single speed with a coaster brake. Heck yeah. The only thing it's missing is the little tassely bits hanging out of the handlebars.
Oh, but you ever got rid of those? Because when you're in the hood, you can't have that.
That's right. You put playing cards in your spokes.
That's right.
That's when you're around as you drive. Anyway, this little trip down memory lane
It's brought to you by.
No, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was weight loss, and that some of us are spending a little too much time sitting in front of the music stand and not enough time hiking around in the mountains.
Indeed.
So I know that there's been like there's a lot of, I'm just going to say it. There's a lot of really skinny people in the Shakuhachi world. You've noticed this, right?
There's a lot of thin people.
There's a lot of really thin people in the Shakuhachi world. There's a lot of Buddhists, a lot of vegetarians, a lot of people that are really on top of their health, and cool. Good for you. I wish I was one of those people.
But we can always strive to be a little bit better and get outside and walk more.
Right. And so that's sort of one of my goals, is that I am right now doing a weight loss program, and I am doing intermittent fasting. And it's funny. It's not that I can't lose weight. I've lost weight numerous times in my life. I find it again. You know?
Lose it and you find it.
Yeah, but like I lost, well, back in right just before 9/11, I lost like 75 pounds doing like old school dirty keto, and lost 75 pounds and was like totally looking good.
Nice.
But I love bread, and bread loves me. And
yeah, but your hips though, that's the thing. I know that pain.
But so what I'm saying is, I am doing a weight loss program, and I am doing intermittent fasting. And so anyone else out there who's playing Shakuhachi, and I'm using Shakuhachi as part of the motivation for it. I don't want to get into it here, but I will be happy to explain it to anybody who's interested.
Yeah.
If you're interested, hit me up on Discord.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Gabriel, who's in our studio, is saying I love bread, and he's thin as all get out. So.
See, people that are naturally thin, that are like, I can eat whatever I want. I was like that too when I was 18, and then my metabolism changed. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it is definitely something that I'm like really focused on right now, trying to get thinner. And it's hard too, because I'm a professional Santa Claus. So
you can't be too thin.
Being a tub of guts doesn't hurt me any financially.
Yeah.
But I do, my costume is more Father Christmas, not Coca-Cola Santa, so I can be thin if I and hopefully that'll be the plan. This year for Christmas will be thin Santa, and my motto is jacked is the new jolly.
That's great. All right. Do you want to take us out?
Yeah, I guess. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions or anything that you want to talk to us about, you can always reach us on Discord. Please join us there. Great group of people, very helpful. We don't always just BS about Chat GPT and Dungeons and Dragons. Although, if you want to do that, I'm there. I'm there
Yeah,
all
the
the time.
Discord's perfect for that.
If you want to talk about D&D, I will hook you up.
Okay.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video, and practice, 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 and row for 10.